have an inheritance that is eternal, and the pain and suffering of this moment will pass.
The resurrection, in a single moment, showed the world once for all time who Jesus actually is.
I bring an indictment on evil. Kingdom of heaven come. I will not be passive and take it like it is. I will pray.
You're listening to the Chapel Sermon Podcast. The Chapel is a non-denominational Christian church welcoming people of all faiths or of no faith background at all. Our desire is that you encounter the presence of God wherever you are in your life.
All right, how's everybody doing? Yeah. Fun day, right? Fun day, absolutely. Well, hey, I just want to say hi to everybody here and everybody across all of our campuses. It's exciting to see what God is doing this fall in our church. So much is happening. We have a worship album that we just dropped. In case you guys don't know and haven't heard it, it's amazing. I would grab it. It's free too, so it's absolutely there. So there's a ton of things that are happening. I had an experience I just want to share with you. A little bit ago, I was actually on a flight headed back home, and we were coming in over Lake Michigan. And one of the things I love doing in a plane is, I know this is kind of like being a kid, but to go with me, I love looking out the window. And I love looking at just the vista of the clouds that you fly on. And every time I do, I'm sitting in this plane and we're headed home and night is starting to fall. And I'm looking out this plane at these enormous clouds. I'm thinking to myself, what an amazing sight. And I think other than my mom and dad, I'm like the first person in our entire family history, all the way back to like Noah, who has seen this, right? Because like, who else has seen this? This is an amazing sight to be literally riding on the clouds. And as we go through them, the clouds kind of part when we get over Lake Michigan, and darkness has just fallen. And I'm looking at the landscape, and it's dotted literally by thousands of points of light. And I'm like, wow, that is incredible. And as the plane gets a little bit lower and goes a little bit farther, the darkness deepens, and I can start to make out the city of Chicago and Milwaukee and all of the suburbs and roads. And it was amazing. It was this beautiful vista, yeah, like that. And I'm like, wow, it was almost just awe-inspiring. And I looked at it and I thought, that is incredibly beautiful. It felt peaceful. It felt timeless. And I remember thinking, man, I want to remember this moment, like, because it feels a little breathtaking. And then we landed, and I had a different experience in the airport than I had on the plane, right? When you land, those of you who've been on a plane recently, you know what happens, right? The second that little chime goes off in the plane, people become the worst versions of themselves, right? Everybody stands up and is jockeying for position to get off the plane. They're grabbing their phone. They're looking at their emails. They're taking calls. They're grabbing their bags. You get into the chaos of the airport, and everybody's looking for bags and Ubers and taxis. And it becomes an entire exercise in just managing what's right in front of you. And I thought to myself, this is a metaphor for life. Like, have you ever been in moments in your life where you just can't handle more than what's in front of you? Can I get an amen? Anybody else? Is it just me? You guys are looking at me like, I have no idea what you're talking about, man. Your life's frankly out of control, Pastor. You ought to do something about that, you know? But there are times, right, that the chaos around us, the speed of life, the confusion, everything that is happening is like right in your face. And the perspective on the ground is different than the perspective from 20,000 feet. They're both real. But sometimes, right, when all we know is what's happening in front of us and around us, we end up losing something, don't we? We lose the big picture view that can inspire us and can kind of reset our heart. Do you know what I mean by that? Like when your phone gets all messed up. Does anybody else have a phone that gets all messed up? It just does it on its own. I have no idea how this happens, right? My phone gets all messed up, and what do? You hit the button and you do a hard reset, right? And it goes back to its factory settings. There's times in life where that's what we need to do. Everything has become so chaotic and hard, and our problems seem so big, and our solutions seem so far away that we need a factory setting reset. And sometimes it's a big picture that can kind of do that, because it can inspire us to not just look down at what's in front of us, but look up. And there's no bigger view for us to look at than the cosmos, is there? The universe. I mean, when you think about that, it's vast, it's exciting, and it's unbelievably interesting. Anybody else love looking up in the night sky besides me? Yeah, I love it. I can't get enough of it. A lot of times, even if I'm working super late and I leave the church and I go out in the parking lot and the lights are all off, and I can just look up and I can see the stars and the planets. And it's fascinating to me. And I look at that and I am mesmerized by the beauty and the peace and the largeness of that. You know, our scientists tell us that the universe is really big. Like, that's probably not news to you, right? But the universe is super big. In fact, they put a number on it. They said it is 95 billion light years across, they think, at least what they know. Now, to put that in perspective for you, if you had like a special rocket ship that could go the speed of light, it would take you 95 billion years to get from one end to the other at the speed of light. That's how big the universe is. And right now, the universe that we at least can see and know has 200 billion known galaxies like our Milky Way. 200 billion. Put in perspective, we have 8 billion people on our planet. This is 200 billion galaxies like our Milky Way, each of them with 400 billion stars like our sun. Most of the stars have solar systems and planets. That's unfathomably big, isn't it? Can we agree that that redefines big? Like that is so big that there's nothing else to compare it to. It's vast. But not only is it unfathomably big, it is also ridiculously complex. Let me tell you what I mean. If you take a look at maybe the universe just from the size of our planet, if you were to go out and you were to catalog all of the animals and the rocks and the plants and our atmosphere and everything you know about it, like how vast would that be? Like if you wrote down every animal you know, how long would your list be? I'm guessing pretty long, right? If you need help on that, you could go to the zoo, right? But you could write down a pretty good list. How about all the plants that you've ever heard of or ever seen? And you start to realize there is this vast array of life and things on this planet. And each of those things, the air in our atmosphere, rocks and plants and animals, are the world we see. But there's an unseen world underneath them of bacteria and viruses, right? This is the one we know the best, I think. There it is. You know that guy, right? You should feel free to boo him. Like we could boo that virus right there. Yes. He is worthy of a boo, right? So that is COVID-19 for those of you who don't know that. But there's a world of bacteria and viruses that exist. In fact, scientists tell us within every drop of seawater, there is 1 million bacteria and 10 million viruses. There is a world in every droplet that we don't even see. But even beneath that world of living organisms that are invisible to us, there's a chemical world that's made up of molecules, right? Like water and carbon dioxide. And those molecules are then made up of atoms like oxygen and iron and carbon and hydrogen. And those atoms are made up of particles that you've heard of, right? Electrons and protons and neutrons. But those particles are made up of subparticles that are muons and quarks and photons. And those particles, we're told by scientists, are actually made up of energy strings like rubber bands whose unique frequency of vibration sings a song that is unique to the element or the atom that it's producing. Does that blow your mind? Like, this is not fantasy. This is happening in every atom of everything, everywhere in the universe. This is the world you actually live in. It's that amazing. I mean, think about it. There are literally energy rubber bands singing a song. And they sing this song, and oxygen comes together, the subparticles and particles and everything, and all of a sudden you have an oxygen atom, and those become water molecules, and those molecules get into proteins and they make the world that we know. Every single thing, every single part of life is made, and you have planets that are part of solar systems, and solar systems that are part of star systems, and star systems that are part of galaxies, and hundreds of billions of them. That's your neighborhood. That's the world that we live in. Like, that's true, as fantastic as that sounds. And that doesn't even take into consideration all the other wonders of life we didn't talk about, like birth in the womb and how everything happens in the world that we have. Well, there's also, the world's even more complex than you may think. That's a picture of a hadron collider. You ever heard of these atom smashers, right? Where they take these things that are about a mile long underground and they whip atoms one way and then whip them another way, and they meet in the middle about the speed of light, and they break the atoms apart, and then they measure everything that happens, right? I actually have played golf with a guy that runs one of these. Seriously. Smart guy, terrible golfer, but a really nice guy. And so, but according to him, and I believe him, he said, when you do this and the atoms all smash, the calculus mathematics that you have to do cannot be performed in less than 11 dimensions. Let me just walk you through that. You and I are comfortable in 3, right? You have height and width and depth in space. We could give ourselves 1 in time, but let's just say we stick with 3. What does that mean? That means that 7/11 of the universe is completely imperceptible to you. That 7/11 of the universe is happening right beside you in dimensions you can't perceive that is even happening. Christians might call it a spiritual realm, but whatever you call it, you realize the world is way more complex than you imagine. In fact, it is so vast and so complex that even telling it seems impossible. How many people at one point in time, and me just recounting these things, you thought, wow, that feels impossible? Yeah, because it is so incredible, but it's true. But it's true. And so when we look at that, we realize it leaves us with a lot of questions, doesn't it? I mean, when we look at our universe, we think, well, where did it all come from? Where is it going? How does it work? What's the point of all of it? What's my place in this? And over the next several weeks, we want to answer as many of these questions as we can. But right now, there's 3 of them that I think rise to the forefront that I would love to start with. And they're such big questions that they kind of determine kind of the rest of the questions. The first one is the question of existence. The question of existence. It might be summed up in this phrase: why is there anything at all? You ever thought about that? Like, when you look at all the possibilities, most possibilities would lead that there would be nothing. Why is there anything? Like, why do you exist? Why does the earth exist? Why does the universe exist? Why does anything exist at all? Existence is not a foregone conclusion. Why would it exist? And when you ask that to people, most people will say, oh, I know, the Big Bang. And by that they mean there was this huge cosmic explosion kind of at the beginning of all things that exploded and everything came into being. And all of the energy became planets and stars and things that we know. And that's a good answer, right? It answers a lot. It helps us have an understanding of how things maybe went from point A to point B. But the challenge of that answer is this. Well, where did that come from? Where did the Big Bang come from? Because we don't live in a world where something comes out of nothing, right? We don't just walk down the street and poof, there's something, right? We don't live in a universe that does that, right? In fact, we live in a universe that does the opposite of that. The second law of thermodynamics says what? Everything gets lower and lower and lower in energy and runs down, wears out, and breaks. That's why you have to buy so much stuff, right? We don't have everything becoming newer, better, different. Does that make sense? We don't live in a world like that. So where did the Big Bang come from? Where did the energy that was part of the Big Bang, where did we get it? Even more so, and this is a little bit of a mind bender, where did the space come from that it expanded into? Because there had to be space before there was something that entered it. Where did that come from? Well, some people say, well, there's not a Big Bang, but here's the thing, there's been an eternal universe. Have you ever heard anybody say that? And they can mean one of 2 things by that. Either the universe as it is exactly how it's always been, and it's just been here, and our perception is off. And if we could know and learn a little bit more, we would know that the universe has been eternal, it has always been here, and it's exactly the way it has been. Or they mean the universe has expanded and contracted infinite amount of time over an infinite period. It's like a yo-yo. It'll expand and it'll contract. It'll expand and it'll contract. And right now, it's just on an expansion, and that's all that we know. But eventually it's going to contract. It's going to do it all over again. And that's how the universe functions. Here's the challenge to that, scientifically. When you look at the universe, it's pretty clear from all the evidence that has been collected that the universe is expanding. It's getting bigger, and it's getting bigger faster, meaning the acceleration is increasing, not decreasing, and it has expanded already so much by a good measure that there's not enough matter in the universe to contract it. So it can't come back. So the yo-yo effect is impossible at this point in time from the laws of physics. Additionally to that, we know it's expanding, so it's not a steady state. All the evidence that we have scientifically points to a universe that had a beginning. It points to a time when the universe was not. Which points us to a very large question. Why is there anything at all? Well, the second question is a question of order. How did the world get so fine-tuned? For a lot of us, we don't, I think, even appreciate how fine-tuned, dialed in our universe is to life, that produces life. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I'm gonna take you in the Wayback Machine. A lot of you are gonna have no idea what I'm talking about. For you old people in here, right? Do you remember TVs before the internet? Anybody remember TV before the internet? All right, yes. My OGs, all right, there you go, all right. Now, when I was a kid, okay, again, yes, we had cars and airplanes, all right, but in our television sets, there were dials. Does anybody remember dials? You'd flick one and go clunk at the clunk at the clunk, right? And you'd kind of get there, and then there'd be two more dials, and the one you would get down is like a safe, right? And you're getting this dial, right? Between these two little paint markings, right? Exactly where it's supposed to be, and you'd have a faint signal come on your television set, right? Of a channel you're trying to get. You remember this? And then there's another dial that's even smaller than that dial, and you would turn that to get the fine tuning in. Now on the TV that we had as a kid, not only did you have to do that, but I would have to leave my hand on it so my dad could watch football, okay? I'd have to stand here and I'd be watching football from here, right? So my dad could watch TV. That's how TV worked. And this was a good TV back then. This wasn't a bad TV, all right? So the universe is kind of like that TV. Now, scientists will argue the exact number, whether it's 12, 15, 17 dials, right? But there's a bunch of dials. And they're not just little dials. Think of dials that are maybe 1 million miles around, but marked off every millimeter. And these dials that are like 1 million miles around could be randomly set on any number they want, but they're not. All of them have been finely dialed in, ridiculously so, to get a certain signal, which is life. Let me tell you what I mean. Steven Weinberg, who's a very renowned physicist and atheist, says this. He says, if gravity was greater or lesser, meaning bigger or smaller, by a factor of 1 in 10,000 billion, life couldn't exist. Think about that. I don't know that I've ever heard of a smaller number, right? In fact, I don't even know how to write that number. That's why I just used words, okay? That means in this dial that has millions of miles around it, if you move the dial like that, life doesn't exist. Gravity becomes too great or too small for molecules to stay together and for everything else to happen. It's that dialed in. When it comes to the cosmological constant, which again, as best I understand it, is the balance of energy in the middle of empty space. I'm not sure why that's important, but people seem to think it is. But it's so precisely dialed in, again, Weinberg says, that it would be like standing on the International Space Station, throwing darts and hitting a bullseye every time that is no bigger than an atom. Every time. It is that dialed in, and if there's more or less energy in empty space than that, everything doesn't work. There's literally, I could tell you 15 more stories like this, of these enormous dials that are literally brought to the hair's razor edge across not just the earth, the universe that yields stability and life. We have a picture of some mountains. I think we do. There they are. First one's Mount Rainier, very pretty mountain, my favorite pretty mountain. And then Mount Rushmore. Do you see a difference between these two? What's the difference you see? They're both mountains. They're both big. In fact, Rainier is bigger, right? What's the difference? Come on, this is not a hard question, man. This is like somebody carved something into one of them. Can we say that? All right, that's the difference, all right? Like somebody went up there with some dynamite and a chisel and like did stuff, okay? The point is this. You have two mountains. One, it's not hard to explain from natural causes. The other would be pretty hard to explain from natural causes. Would you agree? It would be far easier for Mount Rushmore to have been created naturally than the universe to be dialed in the way it is. Literally, there is a face on the universe. It is that clear. And the third question is the question of origin. Well, if the universe had a beginning, what came before it? It's a good question, isn't it? You know why it's a good question? Because nobody can tell you. Because nobody was there, we don't know. But it begs a question, if all this had a beginning, what's before the beginning? When you look at these three questions together, why is there anything at all? Why is everything so ridiculously carefully tuned in and designed? And what was present before the universe? Believe it or not, the Bible addresses that. And it addresses it right up front, right at the beginning. Genesis 1:1. I don't know if you've never read it, it's a bit of a corker. You should read Genesis. So you should get started right away. But I'm just going to read you the first verse. This is sort of a teaser, okay? Here's what it is. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, start there. In the beginning, God. In the beginning, there was a beginning. The Bible agrees with science. There was a beginning. And in the beginning, God. God was before the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, God, who was before all things, who is eternal, created, made, intelligently, purposefully, skillfully, made all that you have ever known, including yourselves. That's a pretty powerful truth, don't you think? If I was going to start a book, I might start it that way. It's a pretty good starting sentence, isn't it? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The implications of this are huge. We could talk a ton about it, but I just want to break it down to just a couple. 3 implications. The first is purpose. We don't live in a universe that is random or accidental. Let me say it again. We don't live in a universe or have a life that is random or accidental, but rather these things are designed by our Creator with a higher purpose in mind for his creation. Meaning there is actually a purpose and a meaning not only to life as we call life, but to the whole universe. There is a purpose to creation. And we're going to talk more about that in the series as it goes along. We're not going to talk about it today, so I'm going to tease you a little bit more, all right? We'll get back to it. But there is a massive purpose as to why God created. Can I tell you why that's important? I talk to so many folks, particularly young folks, who will say something like this to me. I got to be honest with you, I feel kind of like an accident, an afterthought, or a mistake. I'm really not sure my parents thought about having me or even wanted me. I'm not sure the world wants me. I'm not sure I even know my place in the world. And frankly, it has felt like me being an outsider for my entire life looking in. And why would I ever believe that there's a God who thinks differently of me? It's a powerful question, isn't it? Here's the answer. I don't know what your mom and dad were thinking or what they wanted, but I know what God was thinking. And I know what he wanted. He wanted you. He knew you before you were born. He knew your name before he made the universe. He knew everything about you. He sees you. He treasures you. And he has a purpose for your life that is greater than your mom and dad could ever give you. And he wants to make a life with you that will blow your mind. And if you don't believe me, take a look at the other stuff he's made. Pretty good stuff, isn't it? Think what he can do with you. That's what he wants. You're not his unwanted child. You're the child that he longs to be with. Second implication is goodness. Morality is not random either. We live in a world that wants us to believe that there's no right and wrong. In fact, we're told over and over and over and over again that right and wrong is just about preferences. Well, that's not true. If there's a creator, the creator has values. And the creator's values are the values of the universe. Do you realize one of the dials that scientists don't really think about is a moral dial? Just like the universe is physically dialed in to life, it is morally dialed into goodness. The factory setting of the universe is goodness. Everything about it is good. In fact, the Bible even says very good. If we were going to translate it, it might be optimal. But the question then would come this. If that's true, then why do so many bad things happen? Like, why do bad things happen to people who really don't deserve it? Why do things like cancer take people from us far too early? Why in the world does economic collapse happen, or war, or crime? Why do people treat each other poorly based on race or economic status? Why do these things happen? We'll get into that this series too. But it's not from creation. It was not made that way. The factory setting is goodness. There is a right and wrong. Well, beyond that, the last of these implications, at least that we're going to talk about, is hope. You know, it's so easy when we look at the universe. I don't know how this hits you, but like when I look at the vastness of the universe, and I look at how many galaxies and how many stars in the galaxies and how many planets and all of this, and then I look at all the complexity of this, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? I don't understand energy strings that sing a song and we get a world, right? I don't get that. I don't know how that thing works. And I look at all these things, and what it makes me feel is very small. And it makes me feel very weak. And it makes me feel, frankly, kind of dull of wit, like I'm not all that smart. And it makes me realize I'm incredibly temporary. If I'm lucky, I'm going to get 80 years on this planet, which is not even a breath in the universe. I mean, when you think about galaxies, those galaxies will come and go in my lifetime, and they essentially won't change at all. Nothing will even happen in the lifetime of a galaxy. And so when we come to this, it's really, at its best, is a place of humility. And we say, I'm really not the center of this universe. In fact, I'm a really small part of this. And I'm small, weak, and dim-witted, and frankly, not all that. And in that, we can kind of despair, right? We can kind of say, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. Because if I'm going to live well in the midst of something so big and so powerful and so grand, whose wheels turn, I could be caught underneath those wheels, and this could be really bad for me, and I don't have the power to get out from under it. I don't even understand how it works, let alone how to fix it. Where's the hope? The hope exists in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. Hope exists because God is real. Hope exists because God is real. The explanation of the universe is a person. And that person is ridiculously powerful. How powerful do you have to be to throw a big bang into existence? How powerful do you have to be to order galaxies where you want them? How genius do you have to be to get the universe to sing a song and pop into being? Right? How profound is God that he has his hand on the wheel of history? If you think the universe is startlingly large and complex, try the one who made it. More awe-striking and wondrous. Words don't compare. Not only is he great, but he's good. Not just kind of good, not good sometimes and not others, not mostly sort of good. Truly, deeply, completely good. And he knows you, and he loves you, and he wants you just the way you are. And not only that, but he came for you across time and space and became a person so that you could know him. What do we need to be afraid of? Seriously, what do we need to be afraid of? If that God is real and good and here. Like, what enemies make him tremble? What problem is too complicated or hard for him to solve for you? He's God. You see, in this moment, the hope of the universe is that God is real. And that God is your creator. And that God is your redeemer. And that God is your greatest advocate in the entire universe. There is no greater message. There's no greater idea. There is nothing that is going to change your life more. There's nothing that is going to alter the way the world works around you more than that. And while that's absolutely true, it can be hard to see that in the chaos of life. Sometimes, right? We agreed earlier that what's in front of us can get so close and chaotic that it can feel so much bigger than the person who's behind it all. But that's crazy. And in that moment, it's so easy to get caught up and have doubts and fears and questions and concerns and frustrations and forget, right, the genius and greatness and goodness of the God who's there with you in those other 7 dimensions you can't see, right here. In that, we need a reminder. We need the ability to remember. We have to move from the airport into the plane. And we have to get rid of everything that's right here. And we have to be able to look down and remember who God is for us. You know, for some of us, this may be super different. You're like, man, I don't even know what you're talking about. Well, my wife thinks I don't know what I'm talking about. So, you know, we're on that. But there is a God who is every bit as real and marvelous as the universe I just described to you, who literally is present right now and is here for you because he loves you and he cares for you and he wants you to know him in the way he knows you. That's what prayer is, by the way. Prayer's talking. It's talking to God. We make religious stuff so hard. Prayer's just talking to God, okay? You can talk in your normal voice with your normal vocabulary. By the way, you can tell God all your doubts. He's going to be fine. You can tell him everything you're scared of. You can tell him all the things and questions that you have. You can let him know everything you're mad about. That's really okay. He can take it. But then ask him what he thinks. That's prayer too. We learn from God, grow from God, and allow God's presence to grow in us so that not only do we are a product of what we're bringing from the world as an offering to prayer, but we can then release that and receive what God has from us, and we take that from prayer. Worship is just singing our prayers. See how easy all this stuff is? Worship is just singing our prayers. We tell God what we think of him, we pour our heart out to him, and we'll give him space to pour his heart out to us as we do. That's what worship is. And in just a minute here, we're gonna have the worship teams come on back, and we're gonna have an opportunity to celebrate the goodness and greatness of God with him. But before we do, I wanna take just a minute, and I wanna talk to folks who feel like you might not be exactly where you wanna be with God. Take a deep breath. I'm not gonna shame you. I'm not gonna judge you. Everybody in this room has been there at one time or another. Seriously, me too. But what I know is you don't have to stay there. You can take a moment and change your destiny. And that moment comes when you recognize, even with my doubts, concerns, fears, I want to know you, God. And I want to really know who you are, and I want you in my life. And we just approach him and ask him to start to make himself known to us. Now that relationship will grow over time, but it can begin with something as simple as a conversation and space for him to begin to work in our lives. And if you want to do that, you can begin that today. This person called Jesus that we worship and who's kind of the center of things here was that person of God who was a creator. In fact, the first chapter of John in the New Testament tells us that Jesus was the one who made all things, became a man, lived a life, gave an example, died on the cross, not because he had to, because he wanted to, for our sins, so that we could find our way back to God. And when he rose from the dead, hope was reborn. Your hope, my hope. And if that's something that you want, you can have that today. And I'm just going to talk to God on behalf of all of us. And if you want to join me, you can make it personal for you. Does that sound good? Father, we are amazed at who you are. Wow, did you make a universe or what? God, we are blown away by what you have made, but even more than that, by who you are. You are so much bigger than we think. You are so much better than we know. And you know us and want us. Lord, right now, we just draw near to you. Lord, some of us have never done this before, but we want to know you. And Lord, I'm just going to ask, speak to us, Lord. Incline our hearts, put thoughts in our minds and feelings in our hearts. And Lord, let us know you're here and that you want to begin to connect with us. And Lord, I just pray also for those of us who really are wrestling with Jesus. Lord, for those of us who are ready to say, I'm done wrestling. Today's the day. I want to follow Jesus for the rest of my life. Lord, find your way into that and draw us near. And Father, for the rest of us who maybe have let life get a little big, a little crazy, a little bit in our face, that we've lost our vision of who you are and what you bring. Lord, prepare our hearts and inspire us again. And help us remember your goodness and your greatness and your genius as we worship you and pour our hearts out to you. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope this was an encouraging and uplifting experience for you. If you'd like to listen to more of our sermons, you can visit the messages page of our website at chapel.org/messages.